welcome back to the Biblically Inspired Life. I'm so glad that you've joined me today. I know it's been a while since I've done a video, actually a long time, and so I appreciate you sticking with me as I try to put out videos when I can. Many of you may know we've had some things with deaths in the family and so forth, so I just haven't had the opportunity to make a video, but I hope you'll stick around to the end. I have a new recipe today which I love. It's gluten-free, so for those who need that will work for them. And also it's a kosher for Pesach, kosher for Passover recipe. It's an almond cake. It's simple to make. It is pretty rich, but it's delicious and you won't want to miss it. So stick around until that video at the end. Today, I wanted to talk to you about something that just struck me as we were at our study center on last Saturday night. First of all, we always have a little study of the Torah portion for the week, and then we go through a book of the Bible. So this week's Torah portion was called Devarim, which means words, and it's the book of Deuteronomy. So the first Torah portion, Parashat Devarim, that's the first Torah portion in the book of Deuteronomy. So the verses for that are chapter 1, verse 1 through chapter 3 and verse 22. Now, being that this is the last book of the Torah, it's really an exciting time to start a new book of the Bible, and then this will be the last one that we study up until Rosh Hashanah. So we're moving along in the biblical calendar. Now, this is a very interesting book because one of the things that Moses does is he gives a summary or a recounting of the other books of the Torah. And so all of these words that Moses is speaking to the people are to be an encouragement, and it's to bring them a lot of things to think about before they enter the promised land. And so this is Moses' farewell address to the people, and he's really exhorting them and reminding them of many things that God has talked to them about and things that he has brought them through. So some of these things are, he just gives a historical review, which begins with their journey from Egypt and highlights the experience in the wilderness and emphasizing God's provision. We've talked about the holiday of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, and one of the primary things to learn from that holiday is to rely upon God and to depend upon him. The book also centers on the covenant relationship between God and Israel and outlines his expectations for them and the covenant that he has, and it talks about the Abrahamic covenant and just all of the different things that are really the foundation of the Jewish people and their responsibilities and what they actually observed, kept, and practiced in order to provide the framework for the Jewish people living a Torah observant life, which would then, in the land, which would prepare the opportunity or the way for Messiah, Yeshua, to come into the world in Israel to lay down his life in order that the plan of salvation could be made. So this first part of Deuteronomy here that we're going through, it's talking about remembering. And that's something within Judaism, and I would say within the Bible, that is really important. So we have Moses doing this here. We have the telling of the Exodus from Egypt that we tell every year during Passover. We have in the New Testament, we have Stephen, before he was stoned, giving a recounting of some of the history. And then what was very interesting this week at the study center is Baruch is teaching through the book of Acts. And we finished up chapter 14 on Saturday night, this past Saturday night. And I wanted to read to you the last 2 verses of that. So it's chapter 14, verses 27 and 28. And I'm reading in the New King James. It says, "Now when they had come and gathered the church together, they reported all that God had done with them, and that he had opened the door of faith to the Gentiles. So they stayed there a long time with the disciples." Now, what I found really interesting is how this passage goes along, fits together so nicely with the Torah portion that we just read, because it's a telling of the things that God had done. So the people gathered together, and it talks about they reported all that God had done through them, with them, and that how he had opened the door. And what I find so a real principle is that it's really important for us to gather together with fellow believers, talking about Scripture, encouraging one another with what God has done in the past, what he's doing in our lives now, what he's going to do in the future. It's a real time of encouragement. I don't know about you, but we've had many times when we've been sitting with friends and talking about a piece of Scripture, just, like very, very impromptu. It's not like a Bible study. I'm just saying that we're just talking, maybe drinking some iced tea and sitting around, and someone will mention something, and the next thing you know, everybody's got their Bible out and they start talking about it. And it's a time of real encouragement to one another. And I just want to encourage you that it's very important to foster fellowship and community where you are. And if you don't have many people that you can gather with physically, I know there are some different opportunities for you to gather together via Zoom. I know that if you would contact our U.S. team leaders at usteam@loveisrael.org, or you can always send an email through our website, loveisrael.org, and I can send you to the proper person. But there are opportunities to also pray or discuss or share, or you might want to use some of our resources to have just a little discussion time with friends in your home. Not even a specific, real super structured study, but even just a discussion. You could say, we're going to discuss, such and such this week or whatever. But it's really a time to remind ourselves of what God has done, be in Scripture, encourage one another, and just remember God's promises, all of the promises that he has fulfilled so far, and knowing that he's going to fulfill all of the promises that he's made. So those in the future, he's going to fulfill those as well. So I just wanted to encourage you and tell you about how that really encouraged me this week, to see how those two pieces of Scripture, which maybe seem like they don't relate to one or another at all. But I just think it's really important to share with each other what God is doing in your life, and the encouragement and promises that God has for us in His Word. So thanks for joining me this week. Very soon I plan to have a video on Rosh Chodesh, the new moon, the new month. There's a little bit about that in the Bible. The Bible doesn't give a whole lot of specifics, but I'd like to just discuss what it does say and how Judaism has continued to remember the new moon in a special way. So thanks for joining me. And don't forget, this great recipe is coming up. Have a great week. Hi, welcome back to the Biblically Inspired Life. For this portion of the video, we're going to be making a Passover cake. And the one I've chosen is an almond one. So the main ingredient is an almond flour. So I've started already a little bit by putting 3 egg whites in the bowl, and then I'm going to add 3 whole eggs into this. So let's start with that. And you should begin this recipe by preheating your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 177 degrees Celsius. So preheat your oven. They recommend that you put the rack in the middle of the oven. And you also want to have, I have a springform pan here, which is the ones where you can take it apart, see here, and I have pre-greased that, so it's ready to go. I'm putting these eggs in here, so we'll have 3 egg whites and 3 whole eggs. So that's what the recipe calls for. Now to these eggs, I'm going to add the white sugar, which is 1 cup. So here's a half. I was going to use a different recipe, but it needed some extra equipment, and I just wanted to use one that was easy to do. So I'm adding a cup of sugar, white sugar. I have the eggs in here, and then I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt, which I put in with this almond flour. So let's just wait on that. Okay, and then we have 2 kinds of extracts. I have here an almond extract, which this one is from Watkins. So in the US, for example, people know about Watkins. And then I have some vanilla extract. So you need a half a teaspoon of each of these. So here's the almond, which it smells great. It's very strong. I've never used an almond extract before. And then I'm going to add to that the vanilla extract as well. Okay, so far we have in here the sugar, the eggs, the 2 extracts. Okay, so we're going to take a spoon and mix these all together for about 1 minute. If you want to use a stand mixer or a hand mixer, I'm sure that would work really well, but mine is tucked away and I have to dig around to get at it. So I decided to do this instead. Okay, so I've done this for about a minute now, and I'm going to add the almond flour. This recipe calls for 2.5 cups of almond flour. So this is 1 cup, and this is 1.5 cups with the salt. So we'll put that in, and we're going to mix it up. So I'll be back with you in a moment after I get this all mixed up. Okay, I've mixed up the batter. It smells terrific. And as you know, half the time I'm improvising on things because I am not a fancy cook or anything like that. And a lot of times I don't have exactly what you need. So this is a little bit smaller than what they recommend. I think they recommended a 9-inch spring pan, and this is about a 7-inch. So all that means is that the cake hopefully will get taller. So I've combined this all together, and I'm going to put it in the pan, which it does go a lot higher than normal, I'm sure. And the last ingredient, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called demerara sugar, which is almost like a light brown sugar. Here's some that I have here. It calls for 2 tablespoons, which means for my smaller, I probably use a little bit less than that. And you just sprinkle it over the top. Now, another thing that it recommends is some slivered or sliced almonds, which unfortunately, I do not have any right now. I use those. If you've watched my Passover videos in the past, you know maybe that I use the slivers up in my layered salad. So I don't have any right now, but I have put the sugar on top. This is what it looks like. I don't know if you could see a little bit there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the oven for 40 to 50 minutes, and I'll be back with you when it's done. Well, welcome back. The cake is done. It's been cooled for a little while now, and I just added some powdered sugar to the top. It probably would have looked a little bit nicer with the almond slices on top that you could add. But I just wanted to show you that since I had a little bit smaller circumference or diameter, it made a taller cake, which turned out to be really nice. So this was a very easy cake to make. It didn't require a separate mixer or anything like that. And so I hope that you'll give it a try, whether it's for Passover or any time. One of the little tips that I would give you that I read from someone who is a baker, she suggested that you not work against Passover, but to embrace it and work on the recipes and things that don't require a lot of substitutions. So if you're making some sort of regular cake and you use the potato flour instead of regular flour and things like that, it's not going to taste the same. It's not going to rise the same and everything. So don't work against it. Work with the ingredients that are permissible on Passover and have a good time with those, and you'll find that the different things that you make turn out really good. So, Chag Sameach, and God bless you.